It's time now for Perspective. Last week, a UK-based holiday company called Pontins sparked outrage across the UK and Ireland as it emerged that, for years, they had an explicit policy of not allowing people with typically Irish surnames to make bookings at their resorts. There were some 40 names on the list, including Boyle, Keefe and McGuinness. An investigation by the UK's Equality and Human Rights Commission finding that Pontins was directly discriminating on the basis of race. Many in the Traveller and Gypsy community said that the Pontins blacklist was merely the latest proof that they face systemic discrimination in the United Kingdom. Well, my guest today is Sarah Mann, Director of Friends, Families and Travellers. Thank you so much for speaking to us here on France 24 today. What was your first reaction when you learnt about that anti-traveller policy at Pontins?
Well, thank you for having me on your programme today. I mean, first I'd say that it wasn't a surprise at all. This is something we've been experiencing for many years. We run a helpline for travellers across the country, and this is a very common occurrence. I've had a mother in tears on the phone because her family's holiday, which she'd saved and booked and paid for, had been cancelled at short notice by email. She was told it was because she wasn't on the electoral roll. I mean, this isn't a normal requirement to book a local holiday. And she was distraught and humiliated, and her family missed out on their much wanted break. Now, this mother lived on a traveller site, and both she and I thought that this was the reason she had been refused. And this is a common occurrence, and not just with Pontins. In fact, I think the case I'm quoting was not actually with Pontins.
Now, you say that this is extremely widespread. The government condemned the incident with Pontins as disgraceful. Do you think the government authorities take this issue of anti-traveller discrimination strongly enough?
I think because it's, I wouldn't say a subtle form of discrimination, but the discrimination is often based on different criteria than outright saying that we won't have travellers. So, for example, checking people against a name and then finding an excuse which is very difficult to challenge on an individual basis. But it's very clear when you see a pattern emerging of all families with different names being selected for refusal, using different excuses as to why they're being refused. We also see excuses like, oh, we don't take commercial vehicles. And many families, not just travellers, only have access to a van if they use that for work. Or perhaps a camping site will say, oh, we don't take that particular model of caravan, such as a hobby, which is very commonly used by the traveller community. So it's not so easy to detect on an individual basis. And it takes somebody like a brave whistleblower to come forward and actually provide the evidence for this to be exposed to scrutiny.
And as far as you see it, what's the basis for this discrimination? Why is it that travellers find themselves so often on the receiving end of numerous types of institutionalised prejudice?
I think it has a historic context in that gypsies and travellers have lived in England for over 500 years, and part of Romany gypsies are part of the Roma group who live across Europe and have experienced prejudice, as you will know, across Europe for decades and centuries. In England and Wales, there are around 300,000 gypsies and travellers, which is about 1 in 200 people. The majority of those are living in housing, but are often invisible. Passing perhaps as part of the settled community. Nomadism, travelling for work, has been part of Romany Gypsy and Irish Traveller history for many years, and has provided historically a skilled agricultural workforce, which has been an essential part of our economy. But agriculture has changed over the years, and so this travelling workforce has been less wanted. We have changed how we manage land and access to land through various planning acts over the years. What this has done, although not directed necessarily at these communities, has actually closed down the ability to travel, as is the traditional lifestyle, and protected in law, but no compensatory provision has been made for families to be able to stop at traditional stopping places. So it's a complicated picture, and as often with these things, it's not a straightforward answer. Changes which have been made in planning law have not necessarily been directed at these communities, but actually have directly affected these communities. So we've ended up with a situation where nomadic families are living in caravans but have nowhere they can now legally stop, which brings people into conflict with settled communities on cricket pitches, on playing fields, which creates tension. So there's an atmosphere of tension which is not addressed by the local authorities, who actually have the duty to provide stopping places and land for people to live.
And you believe
I
that
feel like I'm talking around.
I don't mean to interrupt there, but you believe that the government has a duty to provide places for these communities to settle if they want to. You think the government isn't doing enough at this current point in time?
So yes, the government certainly has a duty within its own legal processes. So this isn't an opinion. This is actually a part of the duties to provide accommodation for gypsies and travellers as they would with any other community. They have this duty to identify the need within their local area and to provide and identify sites where people can build housing or have caravan sites built. But less than 20% of local authorities have actually identified sites for gypsies and travellers to stop. So there is a big mismatch between the need and the actual fulfilling of the duty that these local authorities have.
Sarah Mann, thank you so much for your time, for speaking to us here on France 24 today. Sarah Mann, Director of Friends, Families and Travellers, speaking to us just there.